COVID happened, but we had to close. So then I had to ask, what made us interesting? Part of it was that line and the conversation that people were having. So I asked, how could we do an online version of what we did,
right,
but hold on to that line?
What would you say is the funniest ever kitchen or restaurant incident?
So this guy was a food blogger. So he writes on the blog, I'm going to have lunch at Per Se, and it will cost me $250. It will cost me 50 hot dog meals. Let's find out if it's worth it. So in between him posting it at 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we've made hot dog buns, we've made relish, we've made ketchup, and we give him a hot dog.
What advice would you give to anyone wanting to be in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, try. Come.
Quick story, one of my first ever jobs was in a pizza restaurant, and it's basically been my weakness ever since. Today, we're slicing into a story that's as rich and as layered as the finest lasagna, tiramisu, or even a 72-hour fermented pizza dough. Now imagine transitioning from the meticulous world of sculpting to orchestrating operations at Per Se, Thomas Keller's 3-starred Michelin masterpiece in New York. Now, picture channeling all of that artistry and precision into crafting some of the most sought-after pizzas in Abu Dhabi, the Middle East, or even the world. Sounds like a culinary fairy tale, right? This is a real-life story of the amazing Raj Dagstani, the visionary behind Marmellata Bakery. Nestled in Abu Dhabi's bustling Souk Al Mina, Marmellata isn't your typical pizzeria. It's a testament to passion, family, and an unwavering commitment to quality. The pies are seamlessly incredible. They blend tradition, innovation. So think fig gorgonzola adorned with roasted pistachios and dried flowers. It's no wonder that Marmellata went straight in at number 29 this year on Mina's 50 Best Restaurants 2025. But here's the kicker. This culinary haven is a family affair. Raj, alongside his sons Emil and Sebastian, have cultivated this space where every slice tells a story and every guest feels at home. So, whether you're a chef, a foodie, or someone who simply appreciates a great pizza, like me, buckle up. Raj's journey is a masterclass into passion, perseverance, and the art of following one's dreams. This episode, I have to tell you, is packed full of incredible, funny, inspirational stories. Time to rock and roll.
Hello, people. Raj from Marmellata Bakery in Abu Dhabi. Whatever you do next, don't do it yet. First, follow, share, subscribe to the JKP podcast. You don't want to miss this one or the next one or the one that came before this because they're all so damn good. Love you, people. Ciao.
Raj, a very warm welcome to the podcast. First of all, it's an absolute honor to have you here because I know you're super duper busy. Now, as always, we kick off with your first or favorite childhood food memory, please.
Stew, man. Stew.
What sort of stew?
Stew. Dad's Iraqi, mom's English. I'm born in the north of England. I grew up in New York. Immigrant parents. Mom was a school teacher. Dad was trying to make business. Mom would always go back. She'd visit her family and the 3 boys. I'm one of 3 boys. I'm the middle of 3 boys born in 1-year succession.
Okay.
So the 3 of us were more like a pile of boys rather than 3 children. So this pile of boys, an immigrant dad, and he would make these huge pots, and he'd just put whatever we had in the originally whatever we had in the chiller. And then it would turn into ochre, and then it would turn into peppers, and then it would turn into whatever it was. But there was always lamb on the bone.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a big pot and it lasted the entire time Mom was gone. And we used to dread it.
So, first of all, in the north of England, was that
Lancashire.
where you Lancashire? So that's where you were born?
I was born in exactly in Lancaster.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the place for like Lancashire hot pot, as you said, loads of stews, hearty food.
Yeah.
And how long were you in the UK for?
3 years.
Okay. So is that what you remember?
No.
No, not at all?
No, I don't remember anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember going back.
Right.
And we had cousins that lived on the fell, and we would climb the hill, and we'd wander off into the woods, and we'd ride motorbikes, and it was a really good time. But no, I have no food memories from the UK.
Okay.
I have football jersey memories. Like, we would go back and visit, and the way everyone dressed was so cool to me.
Right.
But food memories, nah, there wouldn't be any.
So,
but it was Dad's stew. It wasn't Mom's. It wasn't Northern English stew. It was Iraqi soul food, like.
So tell me about Iraqi soul food. What is that for people who wouldn't know about it?
It's just a pot. In our case, it's just a pot. It's a pot of leftovers, and it's lamb based. When the leftovers ran out, it was always lamb, and it was always on the bone, and it was always falling off the bone. And there might have been pickled. There's a Jewish Iraqi sauce called amba. It's a yellow pickled mango sauce, and Dad would always have the pickled sauce, and so that was a dominant flavor. It'd be a serious, hearty meat stew on rice with amba, lots of amba.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was it tasty?
It wasn't as a kid, but then as you grow older and you go off to university and you go off onto your own paths and you long for these flavors and you can't identify what they are, and then eventually it's like that bottle, it's a particular bottle, it's a particular smell, and you long for those. It isn't really the flavor of the food, but it's your childhood, I think, that you're longing for. And so that memory is a conduit to those years. Do you know what I mean? So no, it wasn't. We never thought of it as good. We dreaded it. We literally dreaded it because it was the only time that Dad cooked. We dreaded it, but it was great. It was the greatest thing on earth. Like,
wow.
You know what I mean? And it's totally sustaining. Like, but poor Dad. And Dad was busy. He couldn't have cared. He piled it all in, and it would have been something he learned from his mother. He was one of 13. You know what I mean? And he was on the younger of his batch. So he'd have been hanging around the kitchen.
So then I want to understand when you did take those trips back to the UK and you had your cousins there, what was the sort of food that you would have as a teenager?
Man, junk food. Bags of crisps. Like,
yeah.
It was playing football. It was like we were playing football, and then it was like the corner store, and all sorts like rings out to me. But candy and bags of chips and fried food, lots of fried food. There was never anything gastronomic about England for us.
No, but right. You know, the thing is that it is all of those things. It is crisps and sweets and all of that kind of, and junk.
Right.
But also you need it when you're climbing mountains.
Right. Yes, very much so.
You know, I can imagine.
Yeah.
But then in the US, what were the types of food that you liked there?
Spaghetti. Spaghetti sandwiches were great.
Say again, spaghetti sandwiches.
I'm a pizza guy.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a result of overcarbing all of my life. So yeah, we always had pasta. I always made pasta. When we were in university, I had a friend, Siobhan O'Leary, and so she and I would raid people's pantries. We'd be at parties and we would raid people's pantries, and we would just cook with whatever weird bits were like in the pantry. So, and then Elio's Pizza. Like being left home as kids and what's the key? Latchkey kids. Both parents working and you're home for the summer. And so Elio's Pizza, which was the squares. It's ironic because we started out here making pizza al taglio, which is square. Right. But our childhood memory of pizza was square, frozen pizza in a box. Elio's. I think it still exists. Tasteless, obviously. It was tasteless.
But amazing as a teenager.
But amazing.
As a
absolutely.
kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then...
And Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts.
Classic. Which flavors?
I think I like the fruit ones. It probably would have been strawberry.
Yeah.
But whatever the fruit ones were. My brother liked cinnamon.
I remember Pop-Tarts as well. Are they still around?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But there's all kinds of riffs on them, right? Everyone's making Pop-Tarts, but like fancy versions. But the genesis is the same. Like the origin story is the Pop-Tart.
So then what were your particular interests when you were growing up? So
I rode a skateboard, man.
Oh, skateboarding?
I rode a skateboard, and we ate beef jerky. Like, we ate at 7-Eleven, right, the convenience store. But skateboarding was my life. I couldn't have imagined doing anything else.
And from how old were you doing that?
I don't know, 8. And it was the days of the mailbox, and we used to wait for Thrasher magazine to arrive, and life was just all about skateboarding. And so you'd end up in weird places, riding skateboards and eating microwave bean burritos in the 7-Eleven and beef jerky to get our protein.
Any broken bones, or you were good?
No, I broke my face a few times.
Oh God!
My nose got swollen and never went down.
Oh my God! Okay.
No, skateboarding was great. It was an amazing thing. And I worked in restaurants. I worked in restaurants forever, and I worked in the grocery store.
But what sort of restaurants were you working at when you were a teenager?
The very first restaurant I ever worked in was a pizzeria. It took me a long time to remember that. But yeah, the very first restaurant was Frank's Pizza. I think I was a waiter. It didn't have anything to do with cooking or anything else, but it was like a neighborhood place.
So if And, for example, if nobody's ever been to the US
Yeah.
and they've gone to a neighborhood pizzeria, how would you describe it?
Basic. We got a guy in the kitchen called Edward. He always says basic. Basic. It's basic. It's pizza. It's garlic knots. It's a lot of like the same things people are doing today.
Right.
Salads, uninteresting, iceberg, frozen calamari, probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
classic.
And they're much the same. They're much the same today, except people care more about the ingredients. But big pies done in slices, usually uninteresting, sweeter style sauce, stretchy cheese without flavor.
And for you, did you learn many? Excuse me. Did you learn many sort of people skills as a waiter, or were you just there to sort of get money?
Yeah,
or?
no, I needed money. I was a very antisocial kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. I rode the skateboard. I did what I did. I got through school. I went to university thinking I'd study philosophy. It felt like a very expensive reading list. So I dropped out. I studied art. I thought I wanted to make film. I went to film school. Realized I wanted to make things to watch films out of rather than making films. Dropped out, apprenticed myself to a bunch of, so I had a very practical art education, apprenticed myself to a bunch of working sculptors in New York, which brought me to Italy to learn to carve marble, which led to maybe a deeper appreciation for food, because I worked for these sculptors in Pietrasanta in Italy, where I would make lunch for their students in exchange for using their studio at night. And so I lived in a tent in a farmhouse, and I cooked lunch for these rich Americans that were coming to Italy to do marble carving workshops in exchange for making them lunch. And I didn't know how to cook, so very quickly I had to realize how to cook. And in Italy, it's just all about the ingredients and getting out of the way. So that was probably the turning point where I thought there was more to food. I discovered there was more to food than just sustaining myself.
Before we talk about the food,
Yeah,
I want to talk about the sculpting.
yeah.
So, when did you decide then, along the way with your education,
Yeah.
that you had a passion for art? First
I
of all,
always did. So I always like things. I'm always attracted to beauty, beautiful things. So like my wife and I were talking last night about what it is we want in life. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was to make beautiful things. So beautiful things has always been, as far back as I can remember, decorating the room, my walls as a teenager was like really relevant to me. And it was, we used to draw on our skateboards, right? And so you had your skateboard and then you had the top, the deck, and we used to spend hours like doing graffiti and paint pens on the deck. So making beautiful things was always fundamental to what I wanted to do. And then you're 18 and you're a growing boy and you're becoming a man and you're looking for things to fight back with. And so sculpture is very attractive because it's very physical, and you're working with fire and you're working with stone and you're working with wood and you're working with objects that are pushing back against you. So that friction was really something that I sought after, and I found it with making art. So it was a nice combination of being able to fight back, finding my manhood, and making beautiful things along the way.
And how long were you in Italy for?
I spent 3 summers, so 3 whole summers.
Wow. So when you
Yeah.
say summers, it's 3 months?
3 months, that chunk.
Wow.
So I would move there for the summer.
And which parts of Italy?
Pietrasanta. Pietrasanta is the biggest town is Pisa, closest to Pisa. But it's the hills, like you're between the mountains and the water. It was, really beautiful. So Carrara is the city with the snow-capped mountains, but it's not snow, it's the marble. So you'd look up at these mountains, they all look snow-capped, but it's not snow-capped. It's marble, it's the white marble. So it's the white marble it's the same marble that Michelangelo drew from for his work. Yeah.
But you must have had an incredible time in Italy, because it is, for me, it's a walking museum, that place.
Yeah,
it's
that's a good word.
phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a good word. So like I think the Italians are really good at design. Part of it is just that. Is because you're immersed in good design all the time. So you're walking through a museum in daily life. So you're training your eyes. For without it, you don't need to study design. You're exposed to it at such a low level from the ground up always, that by the time you reach our age, you know design without trying.
So I have to ask, pizza
Yeah.
in Italy,
Yeah.
how is that? When you first, obviously going from the US, and you have the sort of stereotypical pie or pizza there, to then the first time you tasted pizza in Italy itself, how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's 1,000 answers, right? Like, Italy has got the best pizza in the world. It's also got the worst pizza in the world. There's more of it, you know what I mean? But like the guys in Napoli, Concicino Tresanti, it's like or Una Pizza Napolitana in New York. These 2 pizzerias are like, hands down, the most interesting people on the planet. And Concicino and Tresanti, they're like managing expectations and history and geography, and they have the weight of all those things, and they're still pioneering and doing spectacularly good pizza. The best pizza I've ever had in Italy was at Concitino Tresanti, without a doubt. But it was a great restaurant. It was a great experience.
Right.
And it embodied everything I like about pizza. The best restaurant, also the best pizza, Una di Pizza Napoletana, on the Lower East Side, Anthony Mangieri. This guy is, unbelievable pizza. So I didn't realize that I had a thing for pizza. Maybe I still don't, you know what I mean? But I remember when I'm carving marble and I'm working with these 3 sculptors, and it's very intense. And it was an amazing time. And it was my turn to pick dinner on this particular night, and and I say, yeah, I'm kind of thinking cheese and tomatoes and bread, and they're like, it's a fucking pizza, man. You're asking for pizza. It never occurred to me. It was like pure innocence, But those were the flavors that, like, when I had no idea what I was talking about. But yes, I wanted pizza. I've always liked pizza. Like I say, Elio's was a big part of my childhood. So the first pizza I don't remember in Italy. It was probably horrible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've had a lot of good pizza and a lot of bad pizza, and I generally am indiscriminate. I like food and like to eat, and I like to eat bad pizza. I prefer good pizza, but I'd be like, this pizza is horrible. Give me another slice. You know what I mean? So.
But then also,
yeah,
I want to take the opportunity to sort of question you on this sculpting, because
Yeah.
I've never done it before, right?
Yeah.
So I've never seen it. So I want to understand, when you're working with, such, I'm going to call it an ingredient,
Yes, sure.
as marble.
Yeah.
How do you start? Because I can't even imagine. How do you start to carve and make art from something which is so solid,
Yeah.
right? How?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, right? Because it's the same as everything else. And because indecision is the killer of all good ideas. The same with marble, the same with anything else. And so if you know what you're after with the marble, it yields itself to you right away. And so when I decided I wanted to chase marble, there were 2 very different traditions. There were the
Right.
Italians and there were the Japanese. And the Japanese tradition talks a lot about what you're describing, finding the expression within the stone. And so you might not know what you're chasing, but as you work, it emerges. And as it emerges, you chase after it. And the Italians are very, very disciplined. It's a very, very different style. And so you draw and you draw and you draw, and then you translate the drawings into clay. And you model the clay and you model the clay and you model the clay and you model the clay. And you solve all the problems in the clay. And then you touch the stone. But you don't touch the stone until all your problems are solved. If you touch the stone with any amount of indecision, you will waste the stone.
Okay.
And it will die.
So if you're not a sculptor, first of all, what does it mean by... So I understand the drawing process.
Right.
And then what does that mean, modeling the clay?
So you draw a hand. So you say, I'm going to draw this figure.
Right.
I want to make a statue of a figure.
Okay.
So then you say, what's this pose? And so then this is this pose. So then you draw this pose. Then you say, man, the hand is terrible.
Okay.
So then you would take clay and you'd build an armature. You'd build a skeleton and you would practice this. And so you would make this in clay.
Oh, right.
Until you arrived at the same expression that you wanted for the stone. But you couldn't touch the stone until you could do it in the clay. So you had to have multiple skill sets in order to achieve it. But in order to get the ideas out of your head and into 3D, you had to be able to model clay. So you'd have to arrive in this place because for one, you can't choose the right stone until you know exactly where the hand's going to be. And so,
Right.
Sometimes you're getting organic blocks of stone and you can see that shape. You know what I mean? So you have to know that your piece is going to fit within that stone. But it's all about indecision when it's working with marble. If you're indecisive, you go right past the nose. If you're decisive, it fits right there. You know just exactly how much to take off the stone, how much to leave.
And then, so there is, assumingly, different types of marble.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the one that you were working with the most
Right.
was the one which was, as you
Carrara,
said...
the white stone.
The white stone,
yeah,
which is...
beautiful. It holds detail really well.
And how easy or difficult was it to carve?
It's very easy. It's too easy if you are indecisive.
Right.
If you're indecisive, you go right past it. But you have tools. Modern day tools. It's all being air driven, and so it's very easy. The stone yields itself to you easily. But if you don't know what you're after, then it's like really slow and laborious, and it feels like the stone is fighting you.
Okay.
But it isn't fighting you. It's in your own head. What's fighting you is you don't know what the hell you're chasing after. You know what I mean? And you're trying to find it. But if you're decisive, if you know what you're chasing after, then you strike the stone, it yields. It surrenders right away. It's a very soft stone. It's like butter.
And when you're carving it, it's still very much by hand.
Yeah, it's very much by hand, but a lot of it is hydraulic tools. So the hammer motion is coming from a chisel that's compressed air.
Okay.
So this, like, when you're getting into the finer details or in the roughing details, it's hand to hand.
Okay.
But when you're in most of it, 80% of the work, it's air driven tools.
And how big or how small were these pieces that you were sort of learning to sculpt?
Mine were the biggest, were like from the table to here,
Right.
as a piece of stone.
Okay.
So quite small in the general scheme of things.
But then these guys were teaching you the basics or the technicalities of how to do it.
Everything. And so the Italians, they would say you seal with your eyes. So you don't go there and they're like hand feeding you the way it does in the U.S. or you pay a bunch of money for it. They give you access, but that's access. Access is keys to walk into the room. What you take out of it is up to you. That's it. And so most of them don't even speak English. You know what I mean? And I'd have spoken enough Italian to survive, but I couldn't have a political conversation. So.
Right.
So you're taking all the information that you can. But it's really interesting because there's the artisan and there's the artist. And so you have people that are doing copies of Michelangelo's David, and they're one-to-one copies. Those guys are artisan, and they spend their entire life making exact copies. And their sensitivity to stone is unbelievable. But they wouldn't be the artist. There isn't a creative expression.
Sure.
You know, they're imitating what's already been done.
Right.
But their technique and their craftsmanship is something that's, you know, it takes years, even you could say argue generations, to acquire. So you're there as a student trying to get a piece of that, but also trying to understand your own language as an artist, what it is you want to do, what it is you want to say, what you're trying to make sense of the world, right? So art, like food, it's a means of understanding the place that you are. It's a means of understanding where you came from, where you're going. It's a means of answering questions. It's more philosophical. So the artist piece is more about creativity. The artisan piece is more about reproducibility. So it's learning craft, technique.
But I can imagine that after your first trimester there, let's say, you came back obviously full of ideas.
Yeah.
But then when you went back the second and third time, were these artists or artisans, these guys, were they more sort of open, you know, because they knew who you were?
Yeah, very, very much so. And also because like a kitchen, you know, you prove your value and you prove you're there for the right reasons.
Right.
And so a lot of people come to take, some people come to give. In my case, I'm very much a bit of both. I'm there to give and to take, but my commitment is always 100%. You and I were just talking about being sick and doing things halfway. Like, we don't do things halfway. So I went to these particular artists in New York and said, I want to come to Italy to learn to carve marble. They gave me a bag of clay. And they said, okay, show me what you can do. And it was humiliating. And what I did was the best I could do.
Right.
And they looked at what I did and say, you're not actually good enough to touch marble. You shouldn't do it. But you can stay and you can work in our studio and you can manage it while we're away. And then we can look at it the next year. And so then the next year came and they said, yeah, you should come for a month. And I said, yeah, fuck that. I'm coming for the summer. And
Very good.
That's what I say. I bought a tent and I found a farmhouse where I could pitch a tent and I lived in like the tent. And so that opens up doors to you when people see that actually you're committed. And so me making that move opened all those doors for me. So all of the city opened itself up to me. But it wouldn't have if I came superficially and said, I'm here to take and I'm here to learn and I just want and I'll pay whatever it is. It was, you know, it's more about sacrifice and it's more about maybe imitating the same path that the people who are on it were on when they began the path. You know what I mean? Instead of assuming the position of where they are today. But you begin at the beginning. And I was willing to begin at the beginning.
I'm just wondering, culturally, when you know, that first summer that you arrived in Italy, obviously, and I can imagine it's quite a physical job.
Yeah, it's very physical.
Right? You know, because there's a lot going on.
Right.
And obviously by the end of the day, you're super hungry. You know, you've exuded loads of energy.
Yeah.
You know, how often, you know, or was it every night that you were invited to sort of the family tables to eat?
Yeah, it was mega. I mean, it was all that, you know, and like, it's as much about that as it is about anything else. And, you know, it was the lead sculptor's birthday and he's from this town. And it's, you know, it was seemingly the end of the world. And we're on bicycles that are 100 years old and it's his birthday and we drive into the hills and there's a family celebration for him and there's everybody from the neighborhood and I'm the young guy like from New York. And so the first course comes and everyone's finished and there's leftovers and you say, give it to Raj. And I say, yeah, give it to me. Like, I love, and we never left anything on your plate growing up. Like, there wasn't enough to go around. So you never left anything on your plate. It was philosophical. And so, yeah, you know, give me the leftover. And I didn't know what was happening, right? It would have been the first time. And then the second course came. And then the third course came. And give the leftovers. And yes, give them to Raj. Okay, but we haven't even arrived at the fish. And we haven't even arrived at the meat. We haven't even arrived to the bulk of the menu. We haven't even arrived to the pasta. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I don't know that. I don't know this style of eating exists anywhere in the world. You know what I mean? So they all know. But by the time we arrived to the wild boar, which was the end of the menu,
right?
I mean, it's probably, we talked about skateboarding and breaking my face. I was in more pain in my stomach from eating so much and for the pressure of not wanting to leave anything at that point. It was agonizingly painful. Yeah.
What a lesson.
But it was an amazing meal.
Yes, of course.
It was an amazing meal, and it was an amazing education, and all of that came out of spending my time together with these people. And they remain amongst the most interesting people I've ever had time with.
And how welcoming were they in the beginning?
Yeah, fantastically so. But remember, you're in a small town in Italy, and you're in everyone's business. And when I mean it's a small town, it's a small town. Like you drive out, you used to get on the bicycle and you start leaving the town, because the town is the family. Everybody's related, and so you start driving. Martine, my wife, we got married, and the one year we spent as our honeymoon. So we lived together in this little studio as well. And she would drive her bicycle out of town, and the shutters would open. Martina, where are you going? You know what I mean? So it's a very closed environment. Like everybody's aware of everything all of the time. It's very, very much.
So when you graduated, did you decide to pursue arts? So what did you do?
I did both. So I've always worked with food and I've always worked with art, hand in hand, one or the other. Even when we moved here, when we moved to the UAE, it was 2014. We came here for my wife's job. She's a doctor. So we came here when the Cleveland Clinic opened. And those first years, I had a sculpture job in London. And so it wasn't me doing sculpture. It was me teaching kids how to do sculpture or how to express themselves through art, through a public art project, through a charity in London called KIC. And so for the first 2 years, I was working on that project. When that project finished, I went back to food again. I opened Marmellata.
But I want to know, first of all, before we get to Marmellata, I want to know how you stepped into the world of high-end dining.
By accident. I got off the wrong bus. I didn't mean
What do you mean?
Literally? So I'm working in restaurants like you do, and surviving as an artist is very difficult in the best of cases. And surviving as a married artist is spectacularly difficult. And as a father and as an artist and in New York is spectacularly difficult. And I also love restaurants and I also love food. And so, like I say, there's this project and then there's restaurants, or there's this restaurant and then there's this project. And so we went back and forth. And so in the case of the highest levels of fine dining is because I'm working in a restaurant and someone says, this chef is coming to town and you guys would really like each other and you should probably talk to him. And me saying, okay, I'll check it out. And so I get a reservation at that restaurant for lunch somehow, and I go and eat, and then I write to them and say, would you be interested? And they say, come chat, and have you ever been in this restaurant? And I say, yeah, it was Sunday. And they say, what the Sunday? Like, how'd you manage that, And...
But who was the chef?
Chef Keller, Thomas Keller.
So it was Thomas Keller that you had your first high-end dining experience.
Yeah, I worked with Jean-Georges. I worked at Vong. Vong was the fanciest of the nice restaurants I worked at.
Right.
So I worked at Vong when Jean-Georges was opening Jean-Georges.
Okay.
And so it was after Jojo. And so in the arc of his career, he'd have been just starting out, in effect.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And Vong was like the hottest place in the city. And so you opened your doors at 5 o'clock, and there was everybody was waiting. Like, it was packed.
How many covers was that place?
It's probably 120. I'm guessing.
And what sort of food?
Thai, French Thai. So it was one of the first fusion,
right? Yeah.
It was the first of the fusion, and it was someone at the highest level doing it.
So what was a typical sort of service like? I mean, in New York, hot place, people coming in. I'm a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
What happened in this?
It was that quintessential. Elegant, quiet dining room and tinkle of silverware. It was loud,
right,
and it was fun, and it was a David Rockwell room. David Rockwell is like, all of his dining rooms are very expressive, right, and very loud and very powerful. So it was a David Rockwell room. The entire ceiling was gold leaf, and we're going back in time. So it was before that was like everywhere. But it was a very dramatic dining room, but it was quiet in that way that fine dining restaurants can be. But it wasn't trying to be fine dining. It was no tablecloth, street food at the highest level. And Jean-Georges was that guy. And then you would open the kitchen door and it was chaos. And so it was that like dichotomy of quiet tinkling silverware into Jesus flower.
So I want to understand
Yeah.
what position were you in that
I
restaurant?
was a waiter. Yeah,
Okay.
a captain they call it.
Okay, so the captain, essentially, you were, looking after the tables directly, right?
Exactly.
You weren't running the food.
No.
Right. So what were your biggest lessons in that particular setting?
Yeah, we were so busy. You know, working in busy restaurants is different from working in slow restaurants. And it's a real blessing because you feel yourself in extraordinary situations. And what you learn to do is you learn to be in the center of the storm where it's quiet and all the things are going, it's chaos all around you, but you can pause and you can admire it from within. And you're protected somehow because you know the rhythm of it and it's happening around you. And then you can re-engage and you can step back into the whirlwind, which is an amazing thing. So I had never had that experience until then. But once you have that experience, you never want to go back from it because it is like art. It is like fire. It is like stone. It is aggressive. It is fun. And it does make you feel like you're part of this energy source that's moving with or without you. And so to choose to be in it, it just feels like an enormous privilege.
And also, I can imagine, you're talking about Rockwell and the dining room being artistic. It must have been quite cool.
It was amazing.
For you to see it and be involved in that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it was absurd.
So then talk me through, your first meeting, or interview with the legendary Thomas Keller.
So then fast forward 1,000 years, and I am working as a manager at a restaurant called Oceana, which is Midtown. It's a townhouse. It's been there for a million years. Now it's across from Rockefeller Center.
Right.
It's moved. It's more modern. It's got a beer garden, blah, blah, blah.
And
blah.
what sort of food was it?
It was French-inspired seafood. It was all seafood. And so there was a young hotshot chef, Cornelius Gallagher. He was great. And he was voted Food and Wine magazine, one of the upcoming chefs. It was a big deal in New York. And I think it was a 3-star New York Times review, which was a really big deal back then. It still is. It still is, right? Like Jonathan Bennett just got a 3-star review in the New York Times last week. It's a really, really big deal with John George 1,000 years later. Anyway, so I'm working as a manager at Oceana and the what's it called? The lady that does the parties, private dining.
Right.
The private dining lady says to me, Thomas Keller from the French Laundry is coming back to New York. He was chased out of New York. He had a restaurant called Raquel that failed during the financial crisis.
Right.
Moved to California, worked at Checkers Hotel, and then opened the French Laundry, and the rest is history. So Thomas is coming back. Chef Keller's coming back to New York, and you'd probably get on. It was like random. You guys would probably like each other. You should probably talk to them. And so they were looking for who they were calling a director of service. And so I reached out to them and said, would you be keen for a chat? They wrote back and said, yes, can you come on this date? I get a reservation for lunch just before that. And I'm very opinionated, and I've always been very opinionated. And I was very opinionated then. And I didn't really know what the French Laundry was. I didn't really know who Thomas Keller was. And I didn't really, I knew this was a spectacular restaurant, and everyone talked about it, and it was very, very expensive. It was the most expensive lunch I'd ever had.
Right.
So, but I went and I had lunch, and some things I liked and some things I didn't like. And then they invited me back, and they said, "Have you ever been here? Have you ever been to the French Laundry?" I said, "Yes, I was Sunday." And they said, "What? Sunday? Like, how'd you get here? How were you here Sunday?" I said, "I called them in a reservation. I came and had lunch." And they said, "Oh my God, that's really weird. We should have tagged that. We should have noticed that, but we didn't notice that. So, what did you think?" And I said, "Oh, well, I thought this was really great, and this was really great, but this was really weird, and this was really strange. And there were 3 custards like that same texture 3 times. Seemed like a really bit of an anomaly. Like, I don't know why you would do that." And they appreciated that, you know what I mean? Because there wasn't reverence. It was collegial. We were colleagues. And so, like, even now, very much with Marmellata, Simone and Antonia is a colleague. Like, Michelle and Pitfire, she's a colleague.
Yes,
we're
yes.
not competitors. We're colleagues. And so I'm very much at the front of that charge, and I always was. And so I was speaking to them like a colleague. And then they said, part of this interview was, well, what would you do if you were here, type thing. And I said, well, I wouldn't, I would probably pay waiters on a salary. You know what I mean? I probably wouldn't do this whole tipping thing. And they were sort of looking at each other like, because they were building that. You know what I mean? And so, but everybody was building that. You know what I mean? Everybody in New York was thinking, everybody who was interested in doing something great in New York at the same place at the same time, you're all facing the same challenges. And so it quickly became apparent to all of us in the room that we were all aligned on the same ideas. You know what I mean? And I think studying art, reading philosophy, practicing art, studying art, it encouraged you to look for the reasons behind the things that are being done. And so if there's an obstacle, it isn't there's an obstacle and there's a better way. It's like, what brought the obstacle? What problem were they trying to solve when they solved it? Because obviously this is the best solution that somebody could arrive at, as opposed to thinking the negative. You know what I mean? And so art teaches you that, and philosophy teaches you that. And I think at the highest level of anything, all those things converge. And so I was very comfortable in that restaurant, talking very naturally about, the same problems that we were facing down the road and how we would attempt to solve them. So.
And how was it when you first met the chef?
It was great, and cursory. And by the time I met him, because he was in California, New York had decided that, I was the right guy. But they weren't really looking for a director of service. They were really looking for a maitre d', 3 steps down. So I met Thomas in the small dining room, and it was at that point I was rather intimidated. It's Chef Connor had done my research at that point. So, we talked about the egg. Like, I was very mystified by the egg. And him and the way he takes something that's so everyday food and elevate it to such a high level. The egg still remains a mystery in cooking the omelet the way people do, and the way we used to do it in the custard and the shell, and you spend so much hours like perfecting the way it looked and the reason, and it was amazing. But Thomas is amazing. I mean, he's amazingly real. What you see is what you get. He's the same with you as he is with me, as he is with Ducasse, as he is with the president, as he is with Bocuse d'Or. We all get the same guy, and that guy is all about integrity and hard work.
And was part of your training in the French Laundry?
No.
No? So it was all in New York?
Yeah, it was all in New York. I visited and spent a week there, but that was much later. And because per se was online, it was coming online, and the expectations were huge, and we had to get up and going, and it was a huge beast, and it had so many eyes on it. It cost so much money to open. And so the French Laundry was this place that all I wanted to do was overshadow it. I was obsessed with per se being better than the French Laundry, which was absurd. And it was very antithetical to the idea that he had, his idea of they were very much brothers. But still, the French Laundry was the origin story.
So essentially, you're telling me that you were part of the pre-opening team?
After. Yeah, we were open. So
you
per se
were
opened,
okay.
And then they hired 2 guys with with huge pedigrees. A French guy, they made a big mistake. So that group, the Thomas Kell restaurant group, they don't make a whole lot of mistakes. But that was a mistake. They hired 2 very, very pedigreed guys. One of them was French. One of them was Italian. They both came from extraordinary places. They made them both GM. What's underneath the GM? AGM, Assistant General Manager.
Right.
So they hired 2 AGMs under the auspices of that. Let's see how it goes, and one of you will be the GM. So that it was a big mistake on their part, because it kind of put them against each other, it created a competitive relationship. And then there was no director of service, so they said, "Would you join us as a maitre d'?" So I said, "Yeah." So I joined as a maitre d', and what happened was the entire team fell behind me by accident, because they related to me. They didn't relate to the French guy, and they didn't relate to the Italian guy, and the French guy and the Italian guy were too busy trying to make each other look bad.
Right.
That there was, I arrived and I just started getting the job done. And so Chef Keller and Eric Lillevoix, who was the chief operating officer, they just looked at this thing that was happening within the restaurant and said, "That's the GM." You know what I mean? So they said, "Will you not be the maitre d'? Will you be the GM?" And so that was difficult, because then I had to oversee these 2 guys, and their pedigrees were humongous. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I was that skateboarder artist kid. Like,
but I was just wondering, when you were sat in that meeting with Chef and the COO, and they're telling you, "So look, this is going to happen."
Yeah.
How did you feel at that
But
point?
we're moving. Remember, we're moving.
Yeah.
And remember, there's 150 people that work there.
Right.
And there isn't the luxury of we're doing it, and it's already being done, right? And so Thomas would always say, one of his things was, if you treat it like your own, one day it will be. Or we promote the people who are already doing it. And this was very much that. It wasn't like, sometimes you create a history, right? You say, "This is who we are," and then you become that thing. So in that restaurant, in our restaurant, and many of the places or people I admire, you're doing it, and the philosophy is recording the history that you're already doing.
Right.
And so in this case, I'm already doing it. You know what I mean? And so it was great. Let's go. Let's go. But it's very much let's go. We're busy. Remember, we're a really busy restaurant.
And at that point, did it have the accolades or not when you joined?
It would have been just before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and you're saying so back then, the restaurant was what was the capacity per service?
There were 16 tables. You turn the room 1.5 times.
Oh, so they turned the tables as well.
Wow, 1.5 times in the beginning. By the end, we turned them twice, 2.5 times.
Right.
Because it's New York and it moves fast. You know what I mean? And because a 2-hour tasting menu can be, timing is really, really important. And so it has to reflect the city. It was fast. And that's what people don't realize.
So lunch and dinner. 7 days a week?
Lunch on the weekends.
Lunch on the weekends.
Right.
Okay.
7 days dinner.
So I can imagine. I mean, that's. I'm just trying to do the maths, but I mean, that's a phenomenal rate of speed that the team is going.
Massive.
And how many? What was the total team when you were there?
150 people.
150.
Yeah.
So all in.
All in. 150 people. All of them with a background, as it should be. All of them would have been culinarily trained. The food runners had degrees from the CIA.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There were only 2 people in the entire organization that didn't have culinary degrees, and that would have been me and Chef Keller. You know what I mean? So I very much theoretically had to prove myself. What was I doing there? So it didn't make sense in a lot of ways, and I would have been challenged on that, except I was getting the job done.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And we were all getting the job done, and it was a kind of place that was about getting the job done. It wasn't about those 2 guys and their lineage. It wasn't about that, but it had to find its way. So
because what I'm also interested in is that, you can imagine. So California, I imagine, is a little bit more sort of slowed down.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas New York, it's fast paced, aggressive.
I'd have died at the French Laundry. I'd have died. It just would have been too slow. And that twinkling dining room thing, it just doesn't go away.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's the blur between the dining room and the kitchen. It's just a blur. It barely exists at all. And ours was quiet. It was silent. The kitchen, but it was on fire. I mean, from go, it was on fire. You worked so hard and so fast. And those guys, like I say, they'd have been 150 people at the top of their game, working to exhaustion every single day. You know what I mean? You just can't get over the pace of how fast it was and how urgent it was, and the sense of urgency that bled through everything that we did. And people would come and they would do a tour. We would do a tour of the restaurant, because the restaurant is huge, right? And there's a dining room, and there's 2 private dining rooms, and there's a massive kitchen. There's a private dining kitchen. There's a bakery that did the bread. There's a chocolate room that did the chocolate. There's a pastry kitchen that does the pastry. It was massive. And we would do these tours. I would do these tours, and then I would turn around. I'm like, the guy would be 40 meters behind me. You know what I mean? Because we move so fast, and you'd forget. But we all move so fast.
Yeah.
And it's you
the
have to slow
customers
down.
are okay.
They'd be gone. Important people. I'm taking important people to the restaurant, and I'm just so in my pace.
Yeah.
It was an unbelievable beast.
So how is the menu there? So it's a la carte or just tasting menu?
No, so then it was just tasting menu. Right
Okay.
now there's a small bar menu as well.
Right.
Because
Oh
the bar
my
is its own dining room in effect.
Right.
But there was a 7-course menu and a 9-course menu, and then there was a 7-course menu and a 9-course menu, and there was a friends menu. And so if we knew you, we added on, and if you were in industry, we added on. And so it very quickly turns into 16 or 24 or beyond that, you know what I mean? But it sort of went with the threshold of how much somebody, I'm talking about the lunch in Tuscany.
Sure.
How much somebody could endure.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes the conversation is, we're going to hurt them. Out of love.
No, because
and out of everybody wanting to show what this restaurant was capable of.
Well, absolutely, because also, you've got people, I imagine, people from all over the world.
Yes.
Coming in to dine. Right. Super important people, but at the same time you have chefs that fellow colleagues, so on and so forth.
Yeah, 100%.
But what I want to know is also, when you're in that position,
yeah,
and not that they will, but let's say things are not going as they should during the service, or something went wrong.
Right.
How do you deal with that at the time? Because it's such a Formula One level.
Right.
How did the team sort of gather around and make sure that this the guest didn't
right. So
see
I'll tell you how we talk about it at Marmellata, right? Which is the same. And so the way we talk about it, we're a team of 25, and all of us are the same, working to our capacity every day to do the best that we can do. And I talk a lot about there being firemen. And so there's an event that occurs, something goes wrong in the restaurant, and you have newscasters, right? And the newscasters say there's a fire. There's a fire on table 7. There's a fire outside the dining room. There's a fire, whatever it is. And then somebody runs towards the fire, right? So now you've got newscasters and you've got firemen. You need them both. You need more firemen than you need newscasters.
Right.
Right? And then you have engineers. Then you have a guy who steps back and he goes, why did the fire occur? And how do we stop it from happening again? And so you need all three of those personalities in the room. What you can never afford to have on your team is someone who runs away from the fire. They see their fire and they turn their back to it. You know what I mean? It's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem. And so in that restaurant where there's 150 people, there's a lot of explosions all the time because there's personality problems, there's personnel problems, there's operational problems, there's supply chain problems, there's difficult guest problems, there's police problems, there's super VIPs, and there's security problems. There's a ton of them. And so you're a full-time professional problem solver. You have to love that. And you come in with your to-do list and you leave with the same to-do list because there's a whole new set that arrives from the minute you open the door. And that's a really exciting, it either turns you on, you're either excited by that, or it'll kill you. You know what I mean? But and very much like that's restaurants. Restaurants they're very dynamic places, and they're populated with people, sometimes a lot of people. And the more people, the more problems there are. And I don't mean problems in a negative way. I mean there's more opportunities to solve the things that we all deal with. So in a restaurant like that's operating and there's such scrutiny on it, we would solve the problem and then we would engineer the problem out. And sometimes the way we solve the problem on the fly becomes an SOP, right? And so there was a guy, I'll get his name wrong, but he didn't work at our restaurant. He worked at Baloo, right? He worked with, not at Baloo, he worked with, that downtown restaurant. He died recently. He worked at a very, very famous, and his name was Dominique. He was a maitre d' at a very famous restaurant, and the restaurant's packed, like ours. Every restaurant's packed. We're all packed, and there's reservations coming in, but you have people who cannot wait, right? And they're not used to waiting, and so this table needs to get up, and they have no intention of getting up, and this table needs to sit down. They have no intention of waiting to sit down. So this maitre d' goes to the table, and he says, "Can I show you the kitchen?" Right, so now it's like that scene is famous from the Bear.
The Bear, yeah.
You know what I mean? But the Bear came from Dominique back in the day. And Dominique actually did that. Dominique brought them into the kitchen, showed them off, brought them out the back door. By the time he got to the back door, the table was cleaned, reset, the next table was sitting down.
Right.
So people know that story as lore from TV, but it isn't. It's a classic New York story, like...
Because I mean, it's just I think the pace of everything, it just seems so fast.
Right.
You know, but by the time you ended there, you were director of operations at Per Se.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to understand. Did you get much scrutiny with the press when Chef Keller came? Because as you said, he had a failed restaurant.
Right.
When everything had sort of died down and he had proven that he had the 3 stars and all of that sort of thing. How were the press? Because I can imagine they're quite feisty in New York, especially the critics and all of these people that are writers.
Right.
When you knew they were on the table, how did you handle them? Was it the same as every other guest?
Yeah, but it was more. There was more attention. You know what I mean? But I think one of the hallmarks of Per Se and of the French Laundry and of the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group operations is there is no discrimination. And so this dance that happens, this event that occurs it's synonymous with every table across the room. If we identify you as a food person, we had people who come in with a piggy bank. Literally, one of the most famous couples, they came in with a piggy bank. They had saved their money after all these years, and they were so proud of it. And they came and they brought a piggy bank. Wow. This table would have been treated as a super VIP. They would have been given everything that we could possibly do to make their experience way above natural. You know what I mean? As an expression of like meeting their intensity. And so it's meeting their intensity, whether they brought their piggy bank or they were someone within the industry that was also working to make the industry better. And so if you were part of the industry as a food writer, as a chef, as a waiter, as a finance guy, as someone who saved their piggy bank, as someone who came from Florida to eat in New York, you know what I mean? We'd have matched your intensity. But you don't only get that. You also get people who it's just Saturday night, it's just Tuesday night, it's just dinner. And they'd be regulars. They would come every week. And they're just looking for a sophisticated dinner. You know what I mean? So they would have been titans of their own industry, whatever industry. And they're not interested in bells and whistles and VIPs and drama or anything else. They're just coming to be fed at the highest possible level. And so you have to balance all of those things. So yes, a food writer would have been treated well, but he wouldn't have been shown anything different from anybody else. He might have been shown more, but he'd have been shown more in the same way that if you had a culinary student who came, he'd have been shown more the same way.
So from your years there,
yeah,
Raj, I'm just interested, what would be your biggest takeaways from, running and being involved in such an organization like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same as entrepreneurial advice that people are asking for today. You know what I mean? And it's always get going. It's always go. Like, you got to go. You get so locked in your head. And it's the same with the carving marble. And so you waste so much time like butchering the stone instead of investing the time into the clay and investing the time into the drawing. Like, go, get started, move, and move fast. And the faster you move, the faster you learn. The faster you get feedback, the faster you know. You know what I mean? Because otherwise it's just ideas in your head. And ideas are out there floating. There's like, if you have a decent idea, there's at least 10 other people working on the idea at some level. At least 10 other people at the exact same time. And so the faster you get to market, the faster you try your idea, the faster you discover it doesn't work and why it doesn't work and how to make it better. You know what I mean? So if we'd have talked about that kitchen tour, like I'm saying, if Dominique had initiated that move, and there have been so many subsequent SOPs that come from it, it just gets baked into your organization. And sometimes you don't understand where, that's why I say understanding the reason that you got to this place is really important. Like, why do we do that? Why do we do those kitchen tours? This is the reason that we do them. So then how can we do it better? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then once you start tackling how it can be done better, you get better. But it starts with go. Let's go. And what people don't realize about those restaurants, like I think, at the high level, is how intense and how fast they're moving. Like you can't. It's a big ship in a small pond, like a restaurant like Per Se in New York City. And so to turn 180 degrees feels like it takes forever. But there's millions and millions of minutia that has to happen for it to happen. And so the quiet dining room illusion, there's just like, let's go. Let's go.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I remember, and I keep talking to people, you know, when they sort of mention about sort of Formula One or Michelin kitchens, is that when you're in different restaurants, okay, they show you how to chop onions quickly, but how do you chop onions at 1,000,000 miles an hour precisely,
Right.
you know, to the nth degree, and you're right, the speed at that everyone moves at is just phenomenal, and it is to the point of exhaustion.
100%.
You know,
it's so gratifying.
Yes,
it's so gratifying.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And every day is so different. It appears, you know, you're practicing the same 5 dishes or 11 or 12 at Per Se. The menu is different every day, so it was immensely challenging on every level.
What do you mean? It was different every day. How?
The menu is different every day. So the architecture of the menu stays the same, but
Right.
the way that it's populated is different. So if there's a way to the fish, the way to the fish remains the same on the fish course, but you're not going to get the same fish. It's going to be a different fish and a different set. So those guys are being challenged like beyond their scope, whatever you think is even possible. You know what I mean? You design a like simple system for yourself. So I mean, so again, like if I take that to Per Se, if I take that to Marmellata, the way we talk about it is you make pizza, right? And then you make great pizza. And then you make great pizza fast. And then you make a lot of great pizza fast. But you got to make great pizza. You know what I mean? It comes back to that. And you can't just make a lot of pizza, and you can't just make a pizza fast. You got to make great pizza. And then you got to make great pizza fast. And then you got to make a lot of great pizza fast. But it comes from making great pizza. You know what I mean? And when those things start to break down, it's like lifting weights or playing sport, right? First you learn proper form, and then you stress the form. You stress the form with more weight. You stress the form with more repetitions. You stress the form with speed. But the form has to stay. You can't lose the form. You can't say, well, now we're going to increase the weight and we're going to throw the form out the window. No, the form has to remain the same. Otherwise, you break. The system breaks. Everything breaks. You know what I mean? But you don't get to skip this. We're just going to list a ton of weight. No, it's got to be the perfect form, or else it's a 5-year project instead of a 20-year project, right? We're trying to build a 20-year project in Marmellata. So form matters more than anything
100%.
else. Like,
so then, when did you decide to step away from that organization?
We had a family, right? So my wife is a doctor. I'm running. So now there's Per Se, there's Bouchon Bakery, there's Bouchon Bakery Cafe.
Books.
So I'm even seeing this like, you know, and restaurant life with one restaurant, restaurant life with 3 restaurants, restaurant life at that level is, I mean, for all of us, it's a lifestyle. We know that, you know, it's a lifestyle that we love.
Yeah.
So, but if I'm running restaurants and my wife is a doctor, and then we have these 2 children and we're living in New York City, then you have to make a decision, you know, and the idea that we had, as what our family was going to be and the one that we were living were diverging to this point where if we continued on that road, we would become different from the things that we wanted it to be.
Sure.
Right.
So you mentioned 2014 was when your wife
came
to the UAE. Okay.
Yeah.
And first of all, when did you decide that you wanted to open your own place in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, so there's a lot in between, right? So to unpack a little quickly, right? So we're in New York. We have this life. I say it's not going to work. We can survive as with one income. I would rather be a dad. I want to be a father. I want to be a husband. I also want to run restaurants, but this doesn't appear to be that window because if I continue to run these restaurants, I will lose my family.
Right.
I know that. You know what I mean? I don't know them, and I get home at 2 a.m. and I wake up at 8 and I walk them to school and I go back to work. Like, so Martine is offered a job at the University of Colorado doing pathology, which is what she does. So we moved to Colorado. We say, okay, halas. We will leave New York. We'll move to the mountains. I'll take a step back. I'll raise a family. Raising a family is important to me, and we'll figure it out. So we moved to Colorado. She works at the University of Colorado as a pathologist. I raise our family. We have a little jam company. We open a little jam company, which is a whole nother thing. And then the Cleveland Clinic comes knocking on her door to say, we're opening a hospital in Abu Dhabi. Would you be interested in joining? It's too interesting an opportunity to pass up. So 2014, we move here. And I have these odd projects. So I'm in London doing that. I finish this sculpture project. I find this little shop. I want our kids to work. So now I'm a dad, fundamentally. And the same idea of running a restaurant, I'm running the family. I'm running our life, and with the same emphasis on creating beautiful things,
right,
with philosophy, with understanding the reasons behind. So our kids are growing up in this country, and I don't want them to grow up in the bubble of privilege and entitlement, and they don't have the opportunity to work. And some kids are good at sport, and some kids are good at math, and some kids are good with people, but they don't have the opportunity to discover that. So we find this little hole in the wall, and I say we'll open a restaurant because I want them to work. I want our kids to work. And it was being used as a storage shed, but it's right on the water. Like anywhere else in the world, it's waterside property. Like we live on an island. This is oceanside property, but it's using it as a storage shed. So I give the guy a bit of key money. He is to me. We put water, electricity. We open a 1 night a week pizzeria. So then that was when Thursday was Friday. So after school on Thursday, they come and they work.
So then tell me about the name.
Yeah.
Where does it come from? Marmellata.
Right. So that comes from these Denver years, right? We're living in the mountains. And so Marmellata means marmalade, right? And in Italian, in Spanish, in Portuguese, in 1,000 languages. But it's marmalade, citrus fruit. And ironically, it speaks to... So my mother's from Penrith. And Penrith is the marmalade capital of the world. It's got nothing to do with the name. It's got nothing to do, but there's like big marmalade awards, and they're in Penrith. And so marmalade makers all over the world, they all send their marmalades to this little town in the north of England, Penrith, where my mother is born, where I'm born, just outside of. And there's anyway, that's not why we named it that.
I like it though.
We named it that because we had this little jam company in Colorado, and so I wanted to carry that piece of our family name forward.
Okay.
So it just speaks to making jam.
So then when you had the initial idea, it's going to be a pizzeria.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be a pizzeria.
So what was it meant to be?
That's why it's Marmellata Bakery. So the name is Marmellata Bakery, which nobody asks about. So nobody ever asks about the name, which doesn't make any sense, and nobody asks why it's called a bakery. But there are bakeries. The sort of the way a bakery operates is you make a bunch of food and it sells out and you close.
Sure.
Right. And so bakeries open early and they close in the early afternoon in most places.
Yeah.
Here it's a little bit different. Everything is meant to be disposable. Everything's meant to be 24 hours. Everything is everything all the time. So, but really bakeries, they make a bunch of food. That food runs out and they close and they go home and then they do it again the next day.
So what was your first menu then? So if you were a bakery,
it was pizza, but it wasn't going to be pizza.
What was it meant to be?
Here we are, and we're doing a lot of traveling as a family, and we cook a lot, and I cook a lot at home, and we go and we visit these places, and we're going to visit these places. We're going to bring these things back, and then we're going to cook them in the bakery.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so we're going to chronicle our travel, and we're going to unpack places we visit better by digging into their own food histories, and then having an opportunity to express them here.
Right.
And so it's like a bakery. It relates to a lot of people.
So,
you know what I mean?
How old were your sons?
13 and 15, 13 and 18, 13 and 17.
When you opened, 13 and 17.
Yeah, excuse me.
And what was their jobs? You set them out to be in the kitchen, washing up?
So there's only three of us.
Right.
Right, so there's only three. So I did all the cooking. I made all the dough. I did everything. And then they arrived after school, and one was like cashier, and one was on the oven, in effect. Right? And so I'm cutting, Sebastian's reheating, Emil's taking the money. Emil's the older brother, and so he got shortchanged out of the deal because we opened and he was late. And so he finished high school, and then he went to Brussels, he studied, and he came back, and he worked with us, which was brilliant. And now he started his career in London. He's working in finance. And so Sebastian's one who grew up in the restaurant. And so ironically, we build the restaurant, and then we say, okay, we're going to figure out how's it going to run. And so we start doing these like mock services. And Sebastian was like so disinterested, and he couldn't keep his eyes open. He couldn't bear it. And Emil was crack. Emil was like, yeah, we're going to do it like this. We're going to do it like that. Let's try this. Let's try. He was totally turned on. He was totally motivated. And he was like all about figuring out the system. And then we opened the door. And when we opened the door, we got busy, remarkably. And when we got busy, Emil, everything that he did in practice, out the window. He was told that he freaked out.
Right.
Couldn't handle it. Totally freaked out. Like, Sebastian. And Sebastian, who couldn't have been less interested in training or the model, totally came to life.
Ah.
So on the spot, he was the guy. He would multitask. He was like, so it became apparent that he had, unfortunately, a bit of the DNA. You know what I mean? Because it all came very natural to him.
Wow.
Right.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was really good.
So then, when did Marmellata exactly open?
September 2019.
So 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got busy. Pandemic happened.
Right.
What were you doing during that time? Were you still able to cook and send things out?
So it's very interesting, right? So we opened in September 2019. By November, we were busy. So we had a couple of really like spectacularly interesting people that stumbled upon us, and they decided people shouldn't. They should know about it, right? One of them was Hussein Al-Moussaoui, who's now editor-in-chief of National Geographic magazine. He's a brilliant, brilliant photographer. His wife is here. His wife is Zainab, to the moon and back, right? One of my dearest friends here, who I love so much, both of these people. And so, like, he came along one weekend, and the first National Day, we were like, all the pizza's free. Like, it's free for National Day. But there was nobody. You know what I mean? We were at the end of the world. There was nobody around. So it wasn't that one, but it was like our way of, anyway. So Hussein came for that, and he was blown away. He was like, this is like exactly like it is in Rome. We were doing pizza al taglio then. Square trays, no menu. You got what you got. We just made 20 different pizzas, whatever it was. So he came back, and he did a photo shoot with us. And so he spent an afternoon, he documented everything in the beautiful way that he does. He does these incredible Instagram stories. And that was the first like big uptick. So then we just got busy. And we were busy. There was a line of people, and at the end of the line, at this point, Emil's in university. So at the end of that line was me and my 13-year-old kid. And that was it. And so people were like, well, why don't you hire more people? I was like, because the whole point was to work with my kid. You know what I mean? It's not commerce. It's about working with my kid. I want my kid to work.
Right.
You know what I mean? So either you were turned on by that, or you were like, fuck off. And you left. You know what I mean? So it was a filter. Like it is today. It's still a filter. So people came and they got in line, and it was very, very interesting because they got in line and people didn't get in lines. And we're 5 years ago. They really didn't get in lines. You know what I mean? But they lined up for this pizza, and there was no menu, and it was annoying because you got to the front of the line and you wanted pepperoni. There was no pepperoni, but there was orange slices with chocolate, and there was eggplant with raisins. You know what I mean? So you're like, I don't really want that, but I will try it. And they tried it, and they loved it. You know what I mean? And so then it was like, oh my God, that's really... So we would get these emails. Like I waited for a long time. I stood in line. By the time I got there was very little left. And I wasn't too happy about that. But the pizza was great. But I met the most interesting people. You know what I mean? So then very quickly I became aware that actually the line is a really interesting thing. Right? So then when COVID happened, we were really busy. But we had to close. March 2020, we had to close for COVID. Right? So the whole city shut down.
Okay.
Didn't shut down.
But then...
So then I had to ask, what made us interesting? Part of it was that line and the conversation that people were having. So I asked, how could we generate that? How could we do an online version of what we did, but hold on to that line? And so the interesting thing about the line was conversation. So we arrived at this thing of saying, we built a website. We said we were going to open on the same that we do. Thursday night, we're open from this time to this time, but it's by pickup, right? So we do a website that opens at 10 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning. You log on, you order these breads, and then you pick them up. So you buy food and you buy a time slot. So we could still be a restaurant. So then we didn't say we didn't give you a menu. We'd say, this is what we're thinking about, these 10 focaccia, and we made you vote. And so it created a conversation. And so people had something to do, and they had something to talk about. Hey guys, vote for this pizza because I really want this one, and I really want that one. And we switched from pizza to focaccia. Because focaccia, if I put a focaccia in a box and you take it out, it's pretty much the same product.
Yes,
it's the same product.
Yeah.
Pizza's different. It degrades so fast. So we switched to focaccia. We created this voting system, and we opened this online store. And so at 10 o'clock in the morning, the store would open, and by 10:10, it'd be sold out. It totally became gamified. And so by 10:10, it would be sold out.
So hold on.
Yeah.
So 10 a.m.
10 a.m. The website opens. Yeah.
10 a.m.
It's sold out.
Finished.
Done. And there's all pickup slots. It's all the bread that we could make, and it was all because we don't have anything to do. You don't have anything to do. And because we respected that conversation, we looked at what we were doing, and the conversation was important. And so we held on to our audience because we continued the conversation. So we gave them a conversation with us. It wasn't transactional. It was very much about a community. And so they had a communication between themselves. But what would happen is you'd log on in the morning, and you'd be having your coffee, and it's 10 o'clock, and you're loading your cart, but you can't see. So I would open the shelf at 10 in the morning, the store is open, and then I would switch tab to Google Analytics. There'd be 150 people in the shop at 10 in the morning.
Wow.
right? And so then you're taking your time. Should we have this or this? Bing, sold out.
Well, but you must have had so many calls. People
So then from
you know-
10:10 until 12 o'clock, I'm on the phone. Right. Right. And so then eventually, like by the time we got through the summer, eventually I started feeling like it's becoming too much. We're selling more disappointment than we are bread at this point.
Okay.
So then we closed. Right at the height of it, it was like, you know what? Just end it. Just close. Because we can't do more.
And did you have a lot of backlash when you closed?
No, it was always very elegant, and our community is very loyal, and they're very close to us, and it all made sense. And we're coming out of COVID, you know what I mean? And so then we reopened the store, and then Aldar bought all that property. So then we were closed again. Then we were closed for a long time. So then we were closed for like a year.
So in that year,
Yeah.
were you, going into development, rethinking about the whole thing? Did you want to close? What happened?
Yeah, superficially. I mean, I was a dad, and I was, the same principles that let us open that restaurant were the same. And so I'm still being a dad, but I'm a dad now with a restaurant. The restaurant's very small, and I'm still being a husband, and Martine's busy. And so we're living our life. And the restaurants, they tend to be, amongst other things, the greatest passport to the most interesting people. So at this point, we've made a ton of food friends, particularly in Dubai. And so who we're still very good friends with. And so I have that community of people that I'm talking about, but it isn't the way people conceive of, you know what I mean? We're going to have this and we're going to test, we're going to model, and we're going to do. I was very, very much instinctual. And so we got through that, and then I knew we wanted to open again. So we reopened, right, January 2023, different pizza, because at this point, Antonio had opened. He was doing square pizza like we used to do.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't want to go back to doing square pizza. And he had been moving. So I didn't want it to look like we were doing square pizza for people who didn't know. It's like, oh, they're doing like Antonia. I don't want, you know what I mean? So I was like, forget about it. So we're going to do round pizza. We'll do New York, right? We'll open with the focaccia that we were doing, and we'll move to a more New York style pizza. Because no one was doing a crispier style pizza then. Everybody was doing Neapolitan.
But in 2023,
Yeah.
how big? So you started with the three of you,
Right.
right? That was 2019.
Yes.
By 2023, how many team members
Four
did you
of
have?
us,
There
including
were
myself.
4 of you then.
There were 4 of us.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
So during that time,
Yeah.
so 2 questions. Number 1, first off, I need to talk about the color,
Yeah.
right? So and for anybody who has not been to your dining room, beautiful dining room,
Thank
it is
you.
extremely artistic and absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
And now I understand where it comes from.
Yeah, fair.
But why the blue? Why the blue color with the branding? First of all,
Nah, there isn't any reason. The reason is because it's attractive, you know what I mean? And it just grew from there. And things aren't being overthought. Like I'm saying to you, go. And what works, you hold on to, and what doesn't work, you shed. And you find the things that do. And blue just did. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And there wasn't a lot of it. And,
right? Fair
and
enough.
it's a color that makes us feel happy to be surrounded by.
But then the question I was going to ask you is, at which point
Yeah.
did you think, okay, there's 4 of us now, but we're getting extremely busy? When was the turning point for you to start to cultivate and bring more team members into play?
Yeah, it's a good question because, like all these questions, there's not an answer. You know what I mean? But if you look at the parallel, so a lot of startup advice is the same. So people ask a lot about, is it scalable? Is it scalable? Is it scalable? And so they're making decisions based on the fact of whether it's scalable or not. But they don't ask enough of, is it worth scaling? So you have a project that's infinitely scalable, but it's not worth scaling, then there's no point.
Yes, yeah.
And so as a result, we have a lot of bad businesses that are very, very scalable, but they're not worth scaling, but they populate the marketplace. You know what I mean? So we were building something that's worth scaling. And so the startup advice is you scale as you go.
Right.
But you have to be aware of it. And so during COVID, I became aware of it, that in order for us to grow, we'd have to be able to scale. You know what I mean? So when we reopened, we started with the 4 of us, and we've grown to now 25 of us. And we've gone from, let's say, 50 pizza to 450. Now we're doing 500 a night, right? It has to be, you build it in parallel. And so the city has grown, and MENA has grown, and all those things have grown. We haven't just grown by ourselves. I think if you charted us, and you charted Abu Dhabi, and you charted the UAE, and you charted the MENA, there'll be these parallel graphs between all of us. So we've all grown together. And so it's respecting that process. It's knowing what it is that you're doing. And it's having the ability. And so in our case, we started so small, almost too small to fail. And we started with such a practical business model that we were never overextended. You know what I mean? So hiring people and building people and getting better equipment as we grew, we were able to do as a healthy business.
Right.
And a lot of that is just the humility of starting small. We gave birth to a baby business, and we've participated in the growth of the baby business. And maybe it's a teenager now. You know what I mean? It's definitely not a full-grown business, but maybe it's a teenage business. And so we've just like a parent, we parented this business into this position.
But for anybody who hasn't had the good fortune to go and visit you,
Yeah.
first of all, how many pizzas do you have on the menu, and what are your working hours, as in like your trading hours? So at the moment, when we're recording this episode, we're during Ramadan.
Yeah.
Let's say it's not Ramadan; it's a normal sort of time of the year.
Right.
What is that for people who don't know?
We're open 5 days a week. We're open Wednesday through Sunday from 4 o'clock until 9:30. We post our hours as 9:30. Usually we get to 10 o'clock. But I don't want to post 10 o'clock because we sell out. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed, right? So we go until between 9:30 and 10, or until the dough runs out. If it hits 10 and we haven't sold out, then we forfeit whatever's left.
And how many pizzas are on the menu?
5 pizza.
So 5.
5 pizza. There's 2 that are off the menu right now. And there will probably always at least be 1 or 2 off the menu. So there are 3 or 4 things that are off the menu all the time. But there's 5 things on the menu. The menu, and that's the core. So when we open the door at 4 o'clock, we have these 5. When we close the door at 10 o'clock, we have these 5. Halas, we won't run out of those things. In between, there's a lot of things that come and go. And so some of that is managing supply chain. Some of that is special ingredient. Some of that is because technique is difficult. And so managing more than that capacity isn't. So I don't want to put a menu on a bunch of things. I don't want to design a menu that you can just have from start to close. And I don't want to take things off the menu because we've run out of them.
Right.
So the 5 pizzas that are on the menu, there's a pepperoni with spicy honey that's wildly popular. A cheesy basil, which is like a New York style cheese pizza, with the option of adding burrata on it. There's figs with gorgonzola. There's mushroom and kale, and there's artichokes with olive and artichoke.
And when do you decide to sort of slowly change the pizzas?
So with opportunity. So now there's 25 guys, and now we have a bunch of people. Now we have a bunch of people who are better at pizza than me, in effect, because they make 450 pizza every day. They're better. They're good at it. I never made 450 pizza every day. I've got guys that make 500 dough balls every day. Like, they're better at rolling dough balls than I ever will be. You know what I mean? Because they do that it's that thing that we're talking about, right? Make pizza, make great pizza, make great pizza fast, make a lot of it. And so by virtue of that experience, they're very good at it. So now the challenge becomes, how do we get their pizza on the menu? So like, there's 2 pizzas that are off the menu right now. One of them is my own. It's a carbonara, but it's because we did this project with the guys at Local who we love and admire, with this project called Deuces, and this was like a coming together. So we made this pizza for that, carbonara style, it's a really nice pizza. It's a white base. It's finished with egg yolk. Yeah, very thinly sliced beef pancetta, pecorino, crack. It's really good. And then I'm trying to get the guys to do a pizza. So the other one that's off the menu right now is called a Filomena, right? It's Al. It's one of our guys in the kitchen who's very, very talented and who's got all the. I would like for all the guys that work with me when they graduate to be open their own restaurants. That's the mission. You know what I mean? It isn't just to be a great restaurant, but it's to be a great place to eat, a great restaurant, and a great training center for these guys. And so they have the ability. We train. We. How many guys do I interview? They've had 5 years of worth of experience, and we'll make dough together, and they have no idea what to do. They just don't know what to do because they haven't been taught it. It's not because they're idiots. You know what I mean? And so I want everyone to know what to do, and that includes getting a pizza on the menu, which is a really arduous task. It's really hard, and we've got such a loyal.
Oh, yeah.
A loyal fan base, you know what I mean? So Al's Filomena pizza, it's all about Al. It's a tomato pie, it's like a marinara, but it's a marinara on steroids. Anchovy essence, shaved garlic, pickled chilies, Calabrian chili, breadcrumbs, lemon zest. It's a beautiful pizza. And it's not one that I ever would have come up with on my own. But I honor the fact that he came up with it. And he at the end of the night, when we finish 10 o'clock, the guys will put up pizzas. They'll put up pizzas that they're thinking about. We'll make for ourselves so that we can eat. And Al's one of those guys. Gary's one of those guys. Romeo, Nico, everybody in the kitchen. Jeffrey. They're coming one by one. And eventually, each one of them, by the time they leave, they will have pizza on the menu. And so it's an honor. It's an honor for them. It's an honor for me to think that I'm building a kind of restaurant that's honoring the people that are in it.
But what's 2 things that are very interesting, Raj, if I may say. Number one, you could easily open a 12-hour operation because the demand is there. You are notoriously known for having long lines.
Yeah.
Which is I think is incredible. Number one. Number 2, you give everybody 2 days off.
Yeah.
Now, first off, people, I'm sure they've asked you thousands of times, why would you not want to extend your hours?
Yeah.
And that's a conscious decision, which, by the way, when I first found out you were only open for those times, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And all due credit to you. But why did you make that decision in the beginning?
because like I say, this is that piece of giving birth to a baby business. And so all of our problem solving is organic. It isn't taking what someone else says it should be. It's taking what is and making the most of what it is. And so we have a small restaurant that's in the MENA. We'll always be a small restaurant in the MENA. And I think you can get caught up with your success and think it's always going to be like this. And we're always going to have 500 pizza. And there's always going to be a huge line. And let's build a model for that. And so then you triple your kitchen and you triple your staff. And it isn't like that. It isn't like that at all. It is like that in this window of time.
Right.
And so we honor that, the fact that people are in the line. I still work 10 to 10 every day. I still pour lemonade in the line. I still pour carrot when it's cold. We still pass watermelon. We still feed the people. You know what I mean? And it still works as a filter. But in order to shift the economy from a 5-day-a-week restaurant to a 7-day, it's a big shift in the economy. You go from one team that works 5 days and they're super solid to 2 teams that have to work at that same level. And the assumption is there's nobody else opening restaurants. There's no other new challenges. There's nothing else new coming to the market. Like, there's all those forces that work all the time against you. You know what I mean? We're just trying to build our little thing as good as we can and to hold on to the quality as much as we can. And if we can make more, we make more. But it's a small kitchen, so we can only make 500 dough balls. Like, literally, that's the maximum. It's a 24-hour fermentation cycle. So we're limited. And you've seen the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the people on your podcast who haven't, it's a really small kitchen. And we've got more people than anybody would allow for in that kitchen. And they're going back to back. The guys topping the pizza have the oven right behind them.
Yeah.
So you have guys managing the oven, people topping it like back to back. There's no other room. And so it's literally an expression of that. And then I have a neighbor. And so people are like, why don't you expand? Well, I'm not going to ask my neighbor to leave. You know what I mean? The neighbor's happy here. He's building his own life. Like, we're a collection of small businesses in the same place at the same time. So some of it is shifting the economy from 5 to 7. Doesn't make sense. And the assumption is, like, people sell you their problems. You're supposed to be open 7 days a week. You're supposed to be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're supposed to have delivery. You're supposed to have takeaway. You're supposed to have pickup orders. But why? Why do I have to buy all those supposedlies? You know what I mean? Some of those people, they're in business of putting you out of business because they depend on disposable businesses. You come and you sign up and you buy all these subscriptions. They burn you out. They hire another bunch of subscriptions.
Right.
They have to keep renewing themselves. Like I say, we're trying to build a 20-year project. We're trying to build something that's healthy. We're trying to build something with longevity. You know, I don't make the assumption we're always going to be this busy. I know we're this busy, and I'm really grateful we're this busy. But we don't just assume it's always going to be like that.
But also the piece to give the team 2 days off
It's really important.
is really important.
It's really
But I
important.
want to understand from your point of view, why is it so important to you as the owner of the business?
Because I've worked in the business all my life. And because I know if you work with people, it's exponentially more taxing. And you need a day to recover and you need a day to recharge. And if someone tells you can do less than that or they can press it into one day, they cannot do it. And if I'm building a 20-year project, I want you for as many as I can. And if I'm saying I'm building a quality product, I need the quality of the team. You know what I mean? And I need them to be firing on all cylinders all the time. We're busy. And we're busy with people who know what it's supposed to taste like. They know it better than we do because they come every week. We don't eat the food every week. They come every week. They know what it tastes like. If something changes, there's hands that go up. You know what I mean? And so I have to protect them. And I also feel like I'm a guy who has heritage, right? And so if I talked to you earlier about the French guy and the Italian guy, and they came with their pedigree, my pedigree is to say we can shift the industry. We've inherited the industry at point A. We'd like to leave it at point C. You know what I mean? And part of our industry is disposable. People treat people in our industry as they are disposable. And they're not disposable. They're people that make our jobs what they are. They make this. If Dubai, if Abu Dhabi is becoming a gastronomic landscape, it's because of the guys that are working in the kitchen. And if we don't promote them and take care of them and make their well-being the most important thing, we'll lose them. You know what I mean? And then we're just chasing our tail.
No, 100%. I mean, you know, this season we're talking all about wellness.
Yes.
All around.
Yeah.
Now, every time I see your team, all of them, they're super happy, they're engaged, they're smiling, and you can see they actually love to be in that space when they are engaging, or, you know, I'm always sort of peering through the window to see the chefs and just to wave, and they're all like, eh, you know, so
yeah.
And that's a testament to you.
Thank you.
That is a testament to you know, making sure that they're happy. Also, I love the fact that just before you open, there's always that family meal, so they're always together.
Right.
You know, but building that culture isn't easy because you're right. You have, you know, people from a business point of view saying, well, you should be doing this and this and this, but protecting what you have, I think is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, but I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You know, but then I want to also talk about the pizza itself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a 24-hour fermentation.
Yeah.
Got that part. The other part, Raj, is everything on each pizza when
Yeah.
it comes to the storytelling, the flavor, the consistency are all amazing.
Thank you.
You know, and I'm telling you that because the pizza is phenomenal. The
Thank you.
focaccia is beautiful. But when it comes to sourcing the ingredients, also, you don't cut back on that. You know, you really go for the most beautiful ingredients.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Because it's everything, you know, and because if we talk, we were talking about fine dining, and in fine dining, a lot of it is sourcing the best ingredients and then getting out of the way. And so Chef Keller would have told you that whoever finds the best product is the best chef. Technique is something different, but the best chef is about sourcing the best ingredients. You know what I mean? And so our pizza, we just started this version of Marmellata with only 2 pizza. The other ones are organic, like everything else. And so we have a guest who has a fig farm in Liwa. And when we opened this version, she came to us with 5 kgs of figs as a gift. And we ate the figs, and we were blown away by how good the figs were. And so we had to have a fig pizza to honor our friend, Hayal Kubaisi, and her farm, Katf Farm. And so that pizza was it wasn't like, what sells the most? What do we want to do? It was, no, someone gave us a product that really wowed us, and we wanted to make a pizza around it. And in the world of fine dining, figs and gorgonzola is a natural combination. And so we took that idea, and we took these world-class figs, and we made it into a pizza. And we roasted pistachio, and we used some lemon oil, and it just works. And it all comes together really nicely. So that pizza, it's part of our history, for one, because it represents our friendship with this family and with this farm, and 2, it represents our region. We're in Abu Dhabi South Pizzeria. Nobody else can have that pizza. You can have a fig pizza, but it's not going to be these figs.
No chance.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
And then there's this incredible farm. We were doing mushrooms. We were playing with mushrooms. We find this farm that's growing mushrooms in the desert. Below farm, super high tech, super particular. They're very, very good. They make all these different varieties. It just happens that oyster mushrooms roast up like meat. So we get introduced to them, to their products. We're blown away by these mushrooms, particularly this one that cooks up like meat, and we just grow from there. So the mushroom and kale, it's based on a farm that's growing these mushrooms in the desert, in our own region. You know what I mean? That people should pay attention to. And so when we talk about food safety, and when we talk about industry, and we talk about food being grown in the desert, this isn't us. You know what I mean? It's taking something that's being made here and saying, pay attention. You know, don't ignore these figs. Don't ignore these mushrooms. It's very, very particular. And then we have to have a pizza on the menu that has seafood. We have to, because every self-respecting pizza guy has to have an anchovy pizza.
Right.
And so, like, the 5th one is the outlier, right? Cheese is a basic. We do a 3-cheese blend, right? We do a low moisture mozzarella for the stretch, and a fior di latte for the creaminess, and provolone for the flavor. So it's a blend that we've arrived at. And then we contacted a pepperoni maker in the U.S., very, very famous pepperoni maker called Ezzo, Jeff Ezzo. And he does a halal. He happens to do a beef halal pepperoni. So we found that here. We source that here. So the pepperoni is that channel. The cheese is that channel. And then the 5th one is like a Mediterranean pizza that's for me, as a pizza guy, it has to satisfy the anchovy equation, like
the,
you have to have
crowd,
right? And it's a really soft, really, like, my kids love that pizza. They should not that shouldn't be a kid-friendly pizza at all, but they love that pizza.
But then the other thing that I hasten to add is, apart from the sense of community that you've built there, it's also the exceptional hospitality.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, Raj, is that I don't know anyone else in this line of business who goes above and beyond for the guest.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is that when they are in the line and you're giving them that karak when it's cold, or the watermelon when it's hot, and you're striking up that conversation,
right?
I think that is also partly to do with the success, because it's just amazing that you know, standing in a line is annoying generally, right?
Right.
But the fact that people stand in that line for 45 minutes, an hour, and they're really excited to see the team, to see yourself.
Yeah.
But it's all part of that hospitality piece, I feel.
Sure.
And sharing the stories. What have they been up to? How's the family? All of those small nuances.
Right.
So I think it's something that we should all learn from.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I love that. But the other big piece is that, Mina's 50 best, you've just landed at number 29, which is massively, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's really well deserved.
Thank you.
Was that on the cards at all? Was it ever for you, or was it more about just the team?
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously winning awards is great. I love it. And despite the bad press that it gets, and even in our industry, there's so many conversations about the good and the bad and their bot and its popularity and everything else. At the end of the day, we have 25 people that work for us.
Right.
They work really hard. And I can go up and I can say, we're doing a really good job. And when someone externally validates that, it goes a long way. And it doesn't just go a long way for them. Most of them have left their families. Most of them are supporting their families. Most of them have families at home. And when they can send that back to them to say, that somebody else is validating our work, which we're doing so that you can live a better life, it's worth paying attention to. And so the 50 best in particular, because it's voted on by our peers. And that's immensely gratifying. And I don't think we'll make the list again. I hope that I'm wrong. But we're very much like the disruptors. We're very much outliers. We're not a fine dining restaurant. We're a small restaurant. We have, like you say, limited working hours. We have a very small menu. We don't live in the context of most restaurants. And a lot of people open restaurants with the singular task of winning that award. You know what I mean? That's not a singular task. The ethos of the award is very much a part of who we are. The DNA of why that award was generated, the 50 best, and what it's acknowledging and what we're trying to do, they're very, very, there's a huge, massive alignment in them. But us in pursuit of that, superficially, it isn't at all. But sometimes the good guys win. You know what I mean? And I like to think of us as amongst the good guys. We are amongst the good guys, and we do things for the right reasons. And I built a restaurant because I want to be in the restaurant. I don't want to be in front of a spreadsheet. I don't want to be in front of a computer. I don't want to be in front of my steering wheel. I want to be in the restaurant. I want to be in this restaurant. I want to be in my restaurant. And I think that award acknowledges that. You know what I mean? And I also think the opportunity for me to express that was ripe because most people aren't. And that's an reflection of our time. Most people are trying to open multiple restaurants and streams, and restaurants are conceived of as businesses more than they are as restaurants.
Right.
But restaurants restore people. And you talked about hospitality. At the core, we feed people and we restore people, and we're very much in tune with that, and we try to do that. And so for a restaurant like ours to be acknowledged, I just think it's really great for the industry because it allows other restaurants that are doing it for the right reasons
100%.
to say there's a chance. You know what I mean? There's a chance. And obviously there's an economic boom that happens with that. There's success, there's more eyeballs on you. But the reality is the next day is the next day. Everything's the same. The chiller still breaks, the delivery is still late, the guy still gets sick. You know what I mean? It's the same. And so if that didn't excite you the day before, it doesn't change anything the day after. So yeah, it's immensely gratifying. I mean, and no, that wasn't on the cards. And so even we knew we were on the list, right? Because we get an advance notice. But then I say to the guys, listen, we're on the list. Don't worry about it. It's 50. We're going to be 48, 49, 50. It's not a big deal. Like, to be on that list is extraordinary. It spans 19 countries. It's, we're doing something that it's worth paying attention to. That's the end of the day. So to be 29 was staggering. Like, yeah, that was beyond, I can't even tell you.
But what was also, for me, really amazing is that, sort of looping back to the original point as to why you opened the pizzeria. There's this really amazing photo of you that you wore on the night with Dagstani and Sons, and it was about doing this for the boys,
right?
And I think that is really testament to what you're doing,
right?
And look, Raj, I have to say also from a chef's point of view, genuinely, like the entire thing, that everything that you're doing with Marmellata is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
And I say it multiple times to multiple people because I'm a fan anyway.
Yeah.
The food is incredible. The pizza is amazing. The hospitality is beautiful. At the same time, it's a dry concept, so there is absolutely zero alcohol there.
Right.
And when you see the types of people that are around, it's like you've got this beautiful long communal table.
Yeah.
So you see different people, different families. You see so many walks of life there, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it lights my heart to see how incredible that you're doing.
Thank you.
But the other thing that I wanted to understand is, what is the future for Marmellata? What are the future projects that that you want to be working on? Because I can imagine that you are constantly hounded by different business types saying, come here, come there, do this, do that. Let's, so I can imagine that you're actually being pulled apart by different people trying to get you all over the world, let's say.
Yeah.
But what do you want to do, and what are the new projects that you are working on?
Yeah, thank you. It's really nice to hear you say those things about our restaurant, and I hope that they are all those things. That's what we hope for. You know what I mean? And winning awards in addition to that, that's, if we were to choose between the two, as you described, would be, bringing all those people together around a communal table is remarkably gratifying. And so it's the same, right? So if we talk about indecision earlier and carving marble
Yes.
and playing with fire and stone, it's the same. When people call with opportunity, they're usually describing the opportunities they want for themselves.
Right.
What I want is this. What I want is that. What I want is for you to come to Dubai. What I want is for you to come to Riyadh. What I want is you to come to Thailand. What I want is for you to have what I want. But what we want is to keep growing organically and from within. And so we make a sandwich that's really, really, we do these stuffed focaccia sandwiches that are really, really popular. We can't make more of them because of our spatial limitations. We can't open for lunch because we're too busy prepping for dinner. Our kitchen doesn't allow for prep and service to happen in the same breath, right? So we have a product that people love. We have an audience that wants more. We have a team that needs new skill sets all the time, now that we're at 20 people.
Right.
And we had the Sheikh Islama Foundation come to us and say, here's this beautiful property with this organic, creative community that's emerging around it. It's the Miza complex, right, at the other side of the warehouses, and specifically at M39, which is clean creatives, architects, designers, thoughtful people, some of them startups, some of them have been for a bunch of years. There's a small retail space. Can we talk about opening a restaurant there? Yeah. It makes sense because we have all those things. You know what I mean? We're not looking to do more. We're looking to solve organically problems without generating new ones. And so we solve a bunch of problems by opening this new restaurant that's just 1 minute down the road. So it's the same team. It's in the same neighborhood. It's 1 minute down the car. It's the same menu in effect. It has the opportunity to do more, right? So we'll start with just lunch, that lunch slot that we can't fulfill at Marmellata. So lunch, instead of doing the pizza, we'll do the stuffed focaccia sandwich from 11 to 2 in M39 at Barbassi. So it's a snack bar named after Sebastian. Bassi is his nickname.
Ah, okay. So
Yeah.
Barbassi, right. Amazing.
Right. And so again, it's like, family will always resonate. Sebastian and Emil, Martine, like having them part of the business and having them as generators of new ideas is always a big part. So we're opening Barbassi hopefully just after Eid. It's these stuffed focaccia sandwiches. And then because this creative community is emerging around us, we will stretch to accommodate them. You know what I mean? Because it isn't just about us. And Marmellata can be open 5 days a week because we're a destination restaurant.
Sure.
There's nothing there. So people are coming directly for that. So I feel entitled and empowered to say, this is the best expression of this restaurant. This is what makes it work the best. This is how we protect our quality. This is how we build a better team. Maybe it turns into 7 days eventually. I don't know. But this Barbassi, it's serving a community. And if you're in service of the community, I feel like your hours have to reflect that. And so we have to be more flexible with our timings. So we will start with 5 days probably, but it'll with the mission of being 7. Sure. We will be 7. We'll start with just that lunch slot, 11 to 2, but then we'll stretch to 8 to 2, and then we'll stretch 8 to 8. And so I think the best expression of that restaurant is 7 days a week from 8 to 8. But we have to get there collectively as a community. If there's no business, it doesn't make sense to be there because the quality of the product will always come first. But I believe that we have the product that people want more of, the audience that people want more of, a team that knows how to do it, and this creative community emerging around us. So all the right ingredients are there. It's just if they all come together, then we have an 8 to 8 restaurant 7 days a week, which is really nice.
So then when it comes to, the future of dining, whether it's in Abu Dhabi, the wider Middle East, what are your predictions? What would you like to see more of?
I'd like to see more of. What would I like to see more of? I'd like to see more reality. I'd like to see people that cared more about being here every day, investing in restaurants, and a little more humility. Less of the first of, less of the biggest of, less of the most of this, less of the most of, the less accolades and the less adjectives, the more about feeding people and about food being. I had a really good meal at Sophie Pick a couple of weeks ago, and it was really good because it felt really sophisticated and it felt like it wasn't trying to be anything. And so it's a really underwhelming restaurant in some ways because there isn't bells and whistles and drama and storytelling and everything else. But if you're a sophisticated diner, you're being met at your level. And that felt really nice. And it felt really refreshing to me that people were occupying a space technically with their food, with the sourcing, with the environment in the room that acknowledge you as co-contributor.
Yes.
We met at the same level. So that was a really nice meal. And I would love to see more restaurants like that cater to all of us at every different price point and every different meal. So those restaurants don't necessarily have to be for special occasion only. You can afford to eat out at a very good restaurant that's pushing the bounds without calling for drama. So more restaurants like that I think would be spectacularly interesting. It's there's a huge pop-up culture. There's a huge event culture. We're in our restaurant every day, and we choose to be. There's a lot of pull for us to be in all these events, and we, part of my fear is that eventually people will stop asking because we say no so much. But also part of my fear is if I say yes to that stuff, we dilute the brand for one, and also we compromise the quality. So we can't do that. We do discover that as a business, all those other events around us, they actually build our business. And so people don't go out in ones, they go out in multiples. And so if people tag us in a story and then we follow the rest of their night, where were they before and where were they after? They weren't at home, go to Marmellata, go back home. They went out somewhere else before Marmellata. They went to Marmellata. They went out somewhere after Marmellata, and then they went out somewhere again after that. So that's a really nice thing. And so if we look at the growth of our business or what other people should be doing, it's like looking into the way that people. One of the things we had the biggest trouble with was figuring out the way the city moved. The city moves in a different way. It's not like other cities, but understanding the way this city moves and the way our audience eats and how they socialize and what they want to do, and then building restaurants that support our audience for what they want to do, not what we think they should do, I think would be a really great benefit.
So now, Raj, we've come to the quick fire questions.
Quick fire.
All right. So I hope you're ready.
7.
First of all,
6.
I'm going to ask you, and I've guessed this, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
Favorite ingredient?
Oof. Cheese.
Cheese. What type of cheese, my friend?
What type of cheese? Depends on the day.
Okay.
But if I had to say today, Manchego.
Manchego cheese.
Manchego.
Okay. Spicy or pickles?
Spicy. But I love pickles. Why you ask difficult questions? Yes, cheese. You see, I'm still... Yes, cheese. Yes, spicy.
All right. So, fish and chips
Yes.
or pie and chips?
Fish and chips.
Margarita or pepperoni?
Margarita. Yeah, margarita.
I'm surprised. I
Yeah.
thought you were going to be a pepperoni guy.
Nah, margarita.
All right. By the way, that's me. I'm also a margarita
Yeah.
guy. So, focaccia
Yeah.
or shawarma?
Ah, not fair, man. Am I cooking it or eating it?
Eating it, of course.
Shawarma.
All right. Now, from today, as in present day,
Yeah.
can you tell me, for you,
Yeah.
what are your top 3
Yeah.
favorite cuisines to eat?
Italian, Japanese, and I want to say French. But French is kind of the backbone of everything.
True.
You know what I mean? So, do I go to a French restaurant? I don't think I have ever been. Sophie Pickett's French restaurant, so that's not true. Yeah, Italian, French. I love Mexican, but I'm gonna stay French.
All right.
Japanese is great. It's just too damn
Japanese is
expensive.
also good.
Yeah, it's so good.
But for good Japanese, yeah.
Yeah. I love Indian.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
there's a lot. There's a lot.
Right.
Now, for you, who would you say are your top 3 culinary heroes, and they don't necessarily need to be chefs?
Yeah, top 3 culinary heroes. Chef Keller remains a hero. What an icon. Still pioneering, still true, still breaking bounds. I think Charlie Trotter, right, who's now dead, was pivotal. He wrote that book. I don't remember what the book was called. But he was somebody. I read a lot of books, right? I wanted to do philosophy. So Charlie Trotter was a guy. So if I had said we'd have shifted the waiter to be a professional, it's because Charlie Trotter was the first to do that. Charlie Trotter did that in Chicago, right? The first one to put waiters on a salary. But Charlie Trotter was somebody I think for me was massive. And Marco Pierre White. I hate to say that. But yeah, that book again, like Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain. That's a toss-up. Yeah, Anthony Bourdain before Marco. But Marco's book was like, I don't know, it just opened the doors for everything to be possible. And that youthful energy that I'm talking about. 20-year-old kids, that's not what I'm doing. It's what are the 20-year-old kids going to be doing and what should they be doing? And that book, Anthony's as well, like, those are really important. Really, really important.
They are. But I think they're almost Bibles of the hospitality industry in a way. Everyone I speak to say the same.
Yeah.
They say the same thing. Now, from all of your years in the industry and experience and things that you've witnessed, what would you say is the funniest ever kitchen or restaurant incident that you've seen or been involved in, and for legal reasons we don't need to name names?
Yeah. All right. So there's a lot of those. People have keeled over in our restaurants. People have given birth. We've had fights. We've had marriages. Restaurants are places where revolutions are born and marriages come to. So in and amongst all that, we're also a community of cooks, and like you talked about, food writers, and we had so that's a good story. We're working at Per Se, and especially today. Today you get profiled. There's a lot of profiling that happens. If
Right.
you go to a fancy restaurant, by the time you come to the restaurant, they think they know everything about you.
Okay.
They don't. They know the internet's version of yourself, which can be wildly, you can get it totally wrong.
Sure.
But anyway, so this guy was a food blogger, quite a famous food blogger in New York. I'm at Per Se. We'll go back to Per Se days. And this guy's quite a famous food blogger. And so he writes on his blog, I'm going to have lunch at Per Se, and it will cost me $250 for lunch. And that's worth 50 Gray's Papaya hot dog, right? So one of the big hot dog chains, the most famous. It would cost me 50 hot dog meals, which I love, and we all New Yorkers love Gray's Papaya, which is now gone, but we love this. We love this hot. It will cost me this. Let's find out if it's worth it. Okay, so he posts that at 10 in the morning. He's coming to eat lunch at 12 o'clock.
Ooh.
So our receptionist comes out and she brings it, and she says, "This guy, blah blah blah, he's coming to lunch, and he just posted this." And so, we're like, yeah. So I go to Chef Benno, right? Jonathan's cooking. Jonathan's the guy. He's such a good guy. And I give it to Jonathan, and Jonathan says, "Okay, what time? 12 o'clock, chef. 12 o'clock." He comes in, and we know him, but we don't know him. We don't know who he is. And he comes along, and he goes to his table, and he has canapes, and he gets to fish, and he gets to the first meat course. And we give him a hot dog. And so in between him posting it at 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we've made hot dog buns, we've made relish, we've made ketchup, we've made sausage, we've made the most unbelievable hot dog you could ever want. And so he was given the absolute, within the 2-hour time frame, best expression of a hot dog that you could get at the highest culinary train. So it's like, why do I love this story? Because there's a sense of humor to it, because there's a playfulness to it, because there's the art of us not taking ourselves so seriously. We're not going to give him the fanciest steak. We're not going to give him the fanciest cut of meat. We're not going to give him the rarest, most rarefied, spectacularly rare. No, we're going to give you a hot dog the way we think the perfect hot dog should be. And he was absolutely blown away by it.
I bet.
He was blown away. He was blown away by the hot dog. He was blown away by the sense of humor. He was blown away by the playfulness. He was blown away that we didn't blow the cover when he walked in. All that stuff matters. The restaurant isn't just food. It isn't just service. It isn't just hospitality. It's all those things echoing each other all the time. And so I think that was the funniest thing that we were able to do, because we poke fun at ourselves as well. It's a very fancy restaurant. It's costing you $250, and this is the best we can do for that. With that in that category, you know what I mean? The rest of the meal remains the same, but here's your hot dog.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really great.
That is amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, props to Jonathan. Jonathan was so good, and he was the most straight guy. He was so severe, but he was such a teddy bear underneath that, and that was, that was amazing.
What advice would you give to 16-year-old Raj Dagstani?
Hurry the hell up, man. Same advice as ever, yeah. Hurry the hell up. And don't be so hard on yourself. I think we're all hard on ourselves, and we're all pushing for greatness all the time. Those of us that are charged with it, you know what I mean? And sometimes we're already doing it. Sometimes it's just about doing it every day. And so understanding that consistency is what brings greatness out, and some collection of small things being done well instead of the monumental jump is really important. So be a little kinder to yourself and hurry the hell up.
Now, final question is, what advice would you give to anyone wanting to be in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, try. Come. We have quite a famous chef who came to us and said, "My guy wants to work at your restaurant. We're gonna let him go so he can come there." And I said, No. Have him come for 2 weeks. Come, try. Be in as many different kitchens as you can. Be in as many different restaurants as you can. But find your tribe. Find the people who bring out the best in you. And understand that sometimes the best for me isn't what's best for you. You know what I mean? And signing on to the best of what you think it is, or the highest awards, or the best recognition, it isn't what brings out the best in you. So getting closer to yourself is really important. And you don't find that until you've been around to enough places to understand, for whatever reason, I'm most comfortable here. You know what I mean? And so when I went to part of that interview with Per Se, they brought me in and we observed the service. And then during the middle of the service, they put me in the corner and they said, "Stand here and watch how the service goes, and we'll come back to you in a little while." And I said, "Okay." And then 20 minutes passed, and then I went to this right smack in the middle of the dining room. And I just stood right in the middle of the dining room. You know what I mean? And so it could have been conceived as it would have been uncomfortable. I would have known automatically. If I was uncomfortable in that space, it wouldn't have been the right job for me.
Right.
But I knew myself well enough to know that standing here in the corner, I will never know how I feel. I have to feel myself in the fire. You know what I mean? And so I went and I just stood in the middle of the dining room. And also I have enough experience to know that I can stand in the middle of the dining room and look like I belong. I cannot know anything about this restaurant, but I can inspire the confidence of the people who are sitting here that they don't know that I don't belong. Only I know that I don't belong. And let's see how that plays out. And I felt immediately comfortable. They came to me immediately and say, "Oh, come on," pulled me to the side. But knowing where you are and where you're most comfortable is really, really important.
And I love that. I love that, what you said. Find your tribe. I think that's so important for everybody.
Important. Yeah, so important.
Now, Raj, if I wanted to find you or get hold of you, where are the best channels?
JKP podcast. You can only find me here. This is a one-off. You got to watch the podcast. You got to listen to the podcast. Instagram is I think so. We don't do Facebook. We don't do anything else. And I think part of it is like our menu. You choose one thing and you try to do it as well as you can.
Okay.
And so we filter everything through Instagram. So the easiest way to get me is that. Having said that, I'm still that old school guy. So the phone number that's published on Google is my personal phone.
Right.
I answer the phone all night. Like the other day, I had it turned off. I missed 64 calls. You know what I mean? So even during service, I do my best to pick up every phone call.
Right.
Because it's the pulse. So
Got you.
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on social media.
Okay.
My number is accessible.
Done. So I'll put all of those details
Yeah.
in the show notes for everyone to do that.
Thank you.
Now, Raj, I just wanted to say, first of all, a massive thank you for coming in and taking the time to be here in the studio. I know you're extremely busy.
Thanks for having me.
Number two, please don't stop anything that you are doing within the realms of hospitality, because it is absolutely phenomenal. It is, for me, a true example of what hospitality is. And as you said, it's about your team, it's about the people, it's about the community, it's about incredible food. And I can understand now, having talked to you, where this incredible art comes from, beautiful things, and it's all these fantastic things that, you really see and experience as a guest and as a person who's got to know you. So on behalf of the Chef JKP podcast, thank you ever so much. It's been absolutely an honor on my half.
Thank you.
To have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Also an honor for me. I mean, you have everybody. This is a hallowed seat. You know what I mean? I know that, and I appreciate you and everything that you do for the industry, and also that the podcast does. And if I can say one more thing to what you just said, it's to say that I really love restaurants. I really love restaurants. Like, I love them like animals. Like, some people like cats and some people like dogs. I love restaurants. Like, and that's, I think, what you're responding to, and what people respond to is when you see that, restaurants aren't just about commerce. They aren't just about food. They are an animal unto their own. They're an organism, and when they're cared for properly, all the dimensions, something profound has the opportunity to express itself. And this is a country that it's well regarded for its hospitality. It's in the core of the people fundamentally. So that's part of our success. But thank you very much. I'm humbled to be here. Well, I swear to God, thank you.
What a guy, and what an interview. Raj's story isn't just about pizza. It's about the alchemy of art, family, and relentless dedication. From sculpting masterpieces to sculpting the perfect pizza. And it is perfect. His journey is a testament to the magic that happens when passion meets purpose. What resonates deeply is Marmelata's commitment to community, to quality, and prioritizing local produce, like UAE-grown mushrooms from Bilo Farm, for example, and figs from Kataf in Liwa. Raj and his team have crafted a menu that's both innovative and rooted in local flavors. If this conversation has ignited your culinary curiosity, or perhaps craving for exceptional pizza, then share it. Spread the word to your friends, colleagues, and anyone who believes in the power of following one's passion. A massive thank you to Raj for sharing his inspirational journey, and the entire team at Marmellata for bringing such authentic flavors to the table. For more information of all of the details, where you can experience Marmellata for yourself, check the show notes. And by the way, if you haven't already, do yourself a favor and go to Marmellata. Try it. The pizzas are simply irresistible, phenomenal, and incredible. Honestly. Now don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that follow, like, and subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. As always, thank you so much for supporting the show and for tuning in. And you've watched right till the end. Until next time, food is memories.